I got to know Leon when I lived in Reno. I lived in Reno for about 20 years, and because my parents saved the Jewish couple during World War II, I started with Ollie and tried to get speakers to speak. And after I heard his TV interview, I contacted him, and he was so gracious and wonderful. And then I've had so many contacts with him afterwards, and I've been to his home and enjoyed his hospitality. So it's been wonderful and encouraging. He he's very much like other Holocaust survivors in the fact that they didn't talk for a very long period of time, and then they did. And then also,
Julie, could you stand up, turn around, speak to the people behind you?
yeah,
That'd be
the
great.
mic isn't doing well.
So it's not really a mic.
Mike's for Zoom.
Oh, for sure, that's fine. Okay.
That's good, right?
Yeah. He had an interview, and so I got to know him that way, and I've been in other meetings, and he invited me to some of his meetings. And what's amazing that he wrote a book, and it's in Spanish and French and also English. And so, but I will tell you a little bit more just from reading some of the information on here. And he's just amazing, and I can't tell you more than that. But Leon was born in France, in Paris, on October 4th, 1937. He is a Second World War survivor. His parents were deported to Auschwitz and never came back. He was served in the French Air Force during the France-Algerian War, and he immigrated to the United States in 1964. He lived in New York for 18 years, and he was a resident of the San Francisco Bay Area for 30 years. He and his wife, Patricia, well, I guess she's baking cookies, live in South Lake Tahoe. Leon worked in high-tech industry in Silicon Valley, where he held executive positions and served on several high-tech company board of directors. He's currently on the board of directors for the Lake Tahoe Community College Foundation, and he's always for education, so I certainly understand that. He graduated from mechanical engineer from the University of Paris. He's a graduate of the UCLA American Electronics Association and of the Stanford Business School of Management for high technology companies. After 60 years of total silence about his childhood during World War II, Leon decided to write and publish his memoir, which is called We Survived, At Last I Speak. It is available in English, French, and Spanish, and in addition to paperbacks, it can also be available digital download on Kindle.com, and an English audio version that he narrated in Audible.com with his wonderful French accent. It's nice to hear. Leon speaks in middle and high school, colleges, universities, churches, synagogues, Rotary clubs, book clubs in the United States. And he's traveled to Europe and South America to do these talks. He's been interviewed on TV and radio, that's how I met him. And besides writing the book, he loves to bicycle, sail, ski, and golf, which is a wonder at his age. And he earned 4 gold medals just recently, 2021 and 2022, in the national champion road bike, the most important event in road biking in the U.S. And last August, he traveled to Austria and won the coveted jersey of road biking in the World Cycling Championship. So
That's a benefit of living at 6,000 feet, huh?
And Leon will be happy to answer any questions after the presentation. And we're pretty.
He's a world championship bicyclist. I say,
You ought to see his outfits. He really looks great. And we are pleased and privileged to have Leon with us today. Thank you so much, Leon, for being with us.
And we love everybody else online, but could we go to speaker view?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Pastor Max Manjunun, who unfortunately has COVID, and Julia Overslude. Thank you for your introduction, Julia, and thank you for having me. And I thank you all for your interest in World War II Holocaust tragedy. Today, people in Ukraine, Israel, and Gaza are living the nightmare of my childhood. From the age of 4.5 to 8, my sister and I lived with 4 adults we hardly knew, 24/7, scared of bombs and arrest, starving, and being taken away by the enemy. I am a messenger and a witness of what the Second World War and the Holocaust have done to my family and to the world. My parents were born in Poland in early 1900. They were neighbors in a small village in eastern Poland, today part of Belarus or Bielorussia. In their early 20s, still singles, they decided to immigrate to France with a reputation for freedom and world-famous culture. They wanted to get away from the pogroms, which is the massacre of ethnic people, in this case, Jewish people, the anti-Semitism, the hatred, and a bleak future. They did get married shortly after their arrival in France. My sister Rachel was born in 1932 and myself in 1937. For 11 years, our parents lived a happy life in France in a town named Compiègne of about 20,000 people close to Paris. My father was a tailor and my mother a seamstress. They manufactured children's clothes, which they sold in retail. World War II was declared on September 3rd of 1939, 2 days after Germany invaded Poland. France surrendered to the Nazis on June 22nd, 1940. Our lives would from here on be changed forever. Vichy was the French government named by Hitler. So Vichy's first comprehensive anti-Jewish statute passed on October 3rd, 1940. It defined a Jew. The law went on to provide the basis of drastically reducing the role of Jewish people in French society. It excluded Jewish people from top positions in the French civil service, the army, and professions that helped to shape public opinion, such as teaching, the press, radio, cinema, and theater. The statute also stated that a quota system would be devised to limit the presence of Jewish people in the liberal professions, such as law and medicine and others. A second law on June 2nd, 1941, tightened the definition of Jewishness and opened the way for a massive removal of Jews from the liberal professions, commerce, and industry.
Mm-hmm.
On September 1st, 1941, Reinhard Heydrich declared that all Jews aged 6 and over in the Third Reich would wear a yellow star of David prominently displayed. I never did wear the Star of David, though I was 6 in 1943. The punishment for not wearing it was deportation and or death. Death for sure. The French government, collaborating with the Nazis, published 28 laws reducing Jewish people to poverty and starvation. People of Jewish faith could no longer enter a public park, a cinema, a museum, a restaurant. They were not allowed to own a radio. They were not allowed to travel, to move, they could not work in the administration. They could not own a business. They could not exercise professions such as doctors, lawyers, accountants, store owners. Our parents, immigrants, even though they had lived in France for 11 years, were arrested on July 19, 1942 by the French police. I was 4.5 years old. That day is the only memory I have of my parents. I remember holding my mother's dress and the French gendarmes as the French gendarmes were hurrying them down the 2 flights of stairs. Henri and Suzanne Riboulot, our neighbors from the apartment below ours, offered to take care of my sister and me, not knowing they were putting their lives and the lives of their 2 sons, René, 20, and Marcel, 17, in mortal danger for the next 3 years. That day was the last time I would ever see my parents. That morning, my sister and I went from a normal life to a life of hiding, of living in fear 24/7 for the next 3 long years, afraid to be discovered and arrested. Food was scarce and rationed. Most of it was confiscated at the sources to feed the German army. Many evening meals consisted of bread made of a bit of flour, but mostly sawdust dipped in a bit of milk. The Nazis rewarded people for denouncing the whereabouts of Jewish people, resistance fighters, foreign parachutists, gypsies, homosexuals, and others, with food ration cards. As a result, we lived in constant fear of being denounced, as everyone was starving, and many knew that my sister and I were in hiding at the Riboulot family. We escaped several roundups, which would have meant deportation and death of the 6 of us. The closest call came on January 19, 1944. We were saved by a coffee spill. On one of the roundups, and you think I would drink coffee, but I don't. On one of the roundups, the French driver employed by the Nazis told us after the war that he could not read our address due to a spill of coffee. My sister and me were the first on the list to be arrested. The SS arrested all the others on the list and went back to their headquarters to get our address. When they came back, due to some miracle, we knew they were coming for us and had left and were a few miles away. When the German archives were at last opened to the public in April 2006, 60 plus years after the end of the war, we learned that our parents were transported in a convoy of 1,100 per cattle cars 10 days after their arrest from Paris to Auschwitz. Our mother was not tattooed, meaning that she either died during the transport or she was murdered on arrival. Our father was tattooed, number 54315. The records show that he was still alive in September of 1944, more than 2 years after his arrival in Auschwitz, and only a few months before liberation of the camp. Before the war, there were approximately 600 Jewish people living in our town. At the end of the war, my sister and I were the only Jews who had remained in place during the war. November 1st, 1944, one of the happiest, memorable days of my life. The 28th Division of the American Army liberated our town. I was 7 years old and my sister 12. The war ended 6 months later, finally on May 8th, 1945, 6 months after liberation of our town. 4 long years of misery, fear, and starvation had ended. My sister Rachel was 13 and I was 8. We had survived some of the darkest days of human history. We waited, of course, for the return of our parents with great expectations. It took a long time to accept that we would never see them again. I have missed them all my life to this day. In 1959, at the age of 20, I was drafted in the French Air Force during the long French-Algerian War and served 2.5 years. Another war. I never want to see another one. I immigrated to America in February of 1964 with my first pregnant wife, our 18-month-old son, and about $500 in our pocket. I stayed and still in constant touch with Papa Henri and Maman Suzanne Riboulot while they were alive and their descendants nowadays. In 1977, they were awarded the Righteous Among the Nations status, which is the highest honor given by the State of Israel. A righteous is a non-Jewish person or a non-Jewish family that has saved a Jewish person or a Jewish family at the risk of their own lives without any material compensation. A tree was planted by Henri and Suzanne in the Garden of the Righteous of the Mount of Remembrance at the Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem. The World War II Holocaust was the genocide, the killing of 6 million Jewish people perpetrated by Nazi Germany and its collaborators.
Excuse me, is that the picture of your adopted family, the Henri and I'm sorry, I don't pronounce the names, over your right shoulder? Is that picture on the wall, or are those your parents?
No, this is actually my wife and I, but I will show you some pictures in a moment.
Okay.
Hitler, oh, yeah, World War II Holocaust was a genocide of the killing of 6 million Jewish people perpetrated by Nazi Germany and its collaborators. Jewish people and many others were considered subhuman, Untermensch in German. Hitler and his demented followers with a very powerful army and diabolical intentions failed. Once more in the history of the planet, unfortunately for humanity, goodness triumphed over evil. And despite the relatively recent tragedy of World War II, too many on this beautiful earth still deny or pretend to deny the Holocaust, which is a well-documented historical tragedy. I am a living witness of that tragedy. As we continue to live in a turbulent and uncertain world, we should wonder if humanity has learned anything from history. Racism, anti-Semitism, and hate are still present today. Racism is based on the idea that there are different human races: the white race, the black race, the yellow race, and the red race. The Nazis believed that people were to be divided into races, and some were to be eliminated, exterminated. Jane Elliott, a very famous anti-racist educator, showed that the classification of humanity is in different races is wrong. There is only one race, the human race. And we cannot be silent. Our educators, our religious leaders, and our elected officials must remind us of the tragic event of World War II and its sequels. Rise of the Nazis is a wonderful documentary, and it needs to be shown in schools and to elected officials. We must be reminded of the catastrophes due to racism, anti-Semitism, religious hatred, and war that have brought havoc, death, and misery to so many innocents and their families, not for a century, for centuries in plural. Some of you will become, if there are kids in the audience here, will become and are teachers, politicians, and influential citizens. Please use your influence to not repeat the terrible mistakes of the past. Every human being in a world, every human being in a world aspires for what? For peace, freedom, happiness. Elie Wiesel, a Nobel laureate and the author of 57 books, said, just as a man cannot live without dreams, he cannot live without hope.
That's it.
Just as a man cannot live without dreams, he cannot live without hope. Hope is what has sustained Jewish people through more than 2,000 years. Hope lets us believe that no matter how dark the world seems today, it can be better tomorrow. As long as I live, I will never forget these heroic writers among the nation's family, Henri, Suzanne, René, and Marcel Riboulot. They saved my sister and me from certain death and the risk of their own lives for 3 long years. Because of their courage and their compassion, I was a Christian family. I am here with you today. An estimated 70 to 85 million people of all religions perished during World War II. And in those days, it was about 3% of the 2.3 billion humans on Earth at that time. 3% were killed because of a criminal individual, Hitler. We must never forget the millions of people who underwent immense suffering and death during World War II. I hope that writing, talking about my personal history and related events that took place 80 years ago, events that could have annihilated the world, will contribute to a better world. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, awesome.
Andre, Leon, this is Marilyn again. I just finished reading Rachel Maddow's book, Prequel, in which she traces the rise of Nazism in the United States in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and sees it as a prequel. I mean, not a as something that led up to what we now have in the rise of the hard right in the United States, and a new rise of many of these hatreds you've just spoken to us so eloquently about. And I've been really impacted by this book. It's changed my thinking so much. And have you had a chance to see that yet?
I have not. I like her. She's from what I know, an honest person, and I have bought the book, and I'm just finishing another one, and then I will. But
Well, it's a slog. It's hard work, but
prior to the war,
World War
II, there was quite a bit of Nazism. As fortunately, we've had a very courageous president who declared And I believe that if this had happened 2 years before, we would have avoided the death of 70 plus million people and
Wow.
4,000 American soldiers who left their life in Europe.
I was 11 years old when the war began, and my father joined the army. He was part of the liberating force in Europe. He was in combat for 3 years in Europe during the period you're talking about.
Really.
It affected Bob's family too. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see. Can you see this picture here?
Yes.
These are my parents. Aren't they beautiful?
Hold it up again. Oh, they are. Hold it up a little higher.
Oh, they are heart.
Yeah, my mother, Sul, and my mother, Hannah.
Oh, they
This
are beautiful people.
the day of their wedding with the whole family. All these people are dead. Dead in Auschwitz or some other camp.
Oh,
My mother with my sister.
Hold it down.
a little lower. Yeah.
And this is my sister and I.
Lower it, please, a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Sorry,
Are we on the speaker?
This is my parents with my sister.
Oh, they're beautiful.
And this is my sister on the right side. I think you will see on the right side. So that's my sister in the middle on the right side is my cousin, who was thrown into a wagon and probably died during the transport. He was 3.5.
Ah.
3.5. And he had been saved by also a
Their parents would take it away.
Christian family who took care of him. And when the Nazis came to arrest him 2 years after the arrest of his parents, they went to the school where he was with the daughter of the people who saved him, and she was like his mother, and they just just took it from her arms.
Tore
And
him out of her arms. Oh, God.
10 days later, he was dead.
His sister survived.
The building where we lived, my parents lived upstairs, which was the least expensive apartment, and the people who saved us lived right below.
Oh,
And this is the door, the outside door. So that is my little cousin, and the most precious people also are those people. This is the couple, the Christian couple who saved us, who and at the risk of their lives and the lives of their two sons, Henri and Suzanne. Aren't they beautiful?
Yes.
oh, you can see how you love them. You can
Yeah.
imagine.
That's right. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Leon, this is Pastor Max, and I got two kind of different questions. One is that you mentioned eating sawdust, and I wonder if there is any nutritional value in sawdust. And then another one I would ask is can you talk a little bit about both the blessings or the good parts about the United States and the things that you might be concerned about today?
So in reference to our evening meals, the only sawdust value was that we didn't go to bed hungry.
Bulk.
I don't know exactly what it did to our body, but I guess I'm only five today, and it certainly didn't help me with my growth at the time. But I guess I'm sane, so that is important. And in reference to what is going on today, that I have a feeling that we are living again the 1930s.
Mhm.
And I'm very, very concerned about the the political divide, the racial divide, the religious divide. We just have too many divides for something really bad not to happen. It's just it is important that we all vote. That is very, very important, and we vote for, I would say, normal people. That's what we lack today, normal. And I'm very, very concerned.
That's the gist of Maddo's book too.
Yeah. So
I am wondering what can be done to prevent the ongoing misuse of your tragic history to justify violence.
to justify, could you repeat that?
I think she's talking about, Israel and Palestine now. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
It's just horrible. It's extremely difficult to come out. Is someone right? Is someone wrong? This has been going on for 2,000 years, and I'm afraid that it will continue. I'm afraid it will continue to go on.
There was a family, my friend spoke with the son of this family, where a Jewish family and a Muslim family shared a house and lived very continually. And the two mothers breastfed both of their children indiscriminately. They would breastfeed each other's babies, and they protected their families from.
It is horrible what is going on. Is that absolutely horrible? And we're not. We all have, of course, opinions, but it's difficult to have opinions when you don't live there, when you don't know everything that is happening.
Right.
It's very difficult. It certainly is not right. That it's the wars. When a war, it's easy to start a war. It's about impossible to stop it.
Yeah. Good. Mm.
Leon, tell them a little about when you came to America. Tell them a little about when you came to America, how it wasn't very easy for you to, because I think your uncle had that you were split with your sister.
Okay. So what happened after the war is the following: is that I joined the Riboulot family, Henri and Suzanne Riboulot, when I was 4.5, and of course I missed my parents. And within about a month or two, that I really felt that they were my parents. In fact, that there was one way to show that I loved them was to, after the evening meal, to go and sit on Papa Henri's laps. And I remember when this happened, it's just unbelievable, that I was so afraid that he would just put me down. No, he did not. And that was the beginning of a love for both of them. So 3 years when you are that age is that my parents were not there, and I always wondered why they were not there. In fact, I also remember something that you will be interested in knowing, that I was in the bed, and of course I was crying at night, uh, before going to sleep, and I uh, I was thinking that why is it that people do not like Jews? So I had heard of Hitler bad and so on. Why is it that he hates Jews and so on? So I vaguely heard that the Jews had killed Jesus Christ,
Oh,
which it took, it's only, I think, about 15 years that it was denounced by the Pope, that was not true. But that was amazing. All my life, to this day, I still do not know why some people just hate Jews. That's just, it's so ridiculous to think that hate Jews, someone would say, I hate fish, or I had a tree, I hate this and that, I hate a bicycle. To me, it doesn't make sense, but I had to live with it. So, in any case, going back to what Julia wants me to talk about, after the war, we waited and waited for our parents to knock on the door. They will come. And it never happened. But we did hear a knock on the door a couple of months later, and it was an aunt and uncle. She was the sister of my father, and he was the brother of my mother. So very close connection. And they came, and they really, I don't know if it was the war that changed them or whatever. We didn't know, my sister and I didn't know these people in those days. You didn't have a car, and you didn't go and visit people who didn't live in a different town. And they insisted that we should come immediately with them because they were our uncle and aunt. And of course, we didn't know these people. Papa Henri and Mama Suzanne did not know these people, and they said to them, we cannot do that. We promised their parents that we would keep them safe until they return. And we still were thinking that our parents would be returning. So they they left. They were very unhappy. And a week later, that my uncle was waiting at 12 o'clock. Everyone in France in those days, including the students, would go home for lunch. He was waiting and tried to kidnap me. And
Wow.
my sister just came, and she was holding me by one arm, and my uncle was pulling me by the other arm, and I kicked my uncle in leg, and so for a second he relaxed his grip on me, and I was able to go home and to run home with my sister, and of course he could run as fast as I could. I was at that time I was 8.5 years old, and we came home and we told the story to Papa and Mama and Riboulot, and they said, my gosh, what happened? So they didn't know what to do. They didn't trust the French police for what their collaboration with the Germans. So they decided to go and see the mayor of the town, the mayor of Compiègne. He happened to be the Baron of Rothschild. His name was James Rothschild, and he was the mayor of the town before the war and after the war. And he says, well, you have to go and see the police, but I understand why you don't want to. So he says, what you can do is just send the children to us. They had a little castle in the countryside of Compiègne. So we went, spent about a month or two in this beautiful castle, and we were served breakfast in bed. It was just we call it in French La Vie de Château, which means the life of a castle. It was fantastic. We didn't go to school. So after that, we came back home, and we found out that my uncle and aunt had taken Papa and Mama Riboulot to justice, to the judge. So a few months later, that we went to the judge, and we were certain that the judge would decide for us to keep there. He never asked for our opinion, but he did not. That afternoon, he declared that we should go with our family, and that we did not know, we had nothing to do with them. And we just went there to Saint Quentin, was the name of the town, about 60 miles away from where we were. And it was not Saint Quentin in near San Francisco, but it sounded like that. It felt so.
Absolutely.
We were never happy there. And after 2 years, my uncle and aunt decided to send my sister Rachel uh, to New York, to Brooklyn, to an aunt, and with a promise that I would be going within a few months, 6 months at the most. Well, years went by, and they I was never there. So after 2 years, I heard that my uncle and aunt, since I was terrible with them. I just every day I would ask them, I want to return to Papa and Mama Riboulot and so on. And I did everything possible to make their life miserable and to make my life miserable as well. And they decided to send me to an orphanage. So when I heard that this was, I had lost my parents, I had lost my second parents to me, I had lost my sister who was 3,000 miles away or more. I was desperate, and I was 12 years old at the time. So I decided to go and see the person who was in charge, or not in charge, but there was a group of Jewish people who met once a month, and I went to see him. That was Mr. Zilberberg, and I decided to go and see him. I explained to him what I was going to do, which was I would just go and live in a forest. I decided I was not going to go to an orphanage when people who wanted me. So he said, Leon, just don't do anything bad that you don't want to be dealing with the police. They will find you anyway, and so on. But 2 weeks later, that my uncle and aunt were asked to come to the meeting of this Jewish group. And when they came back, they said, okay, you can leave. And within a couple of days is that I just took the train by myself. I was 12. I had a little bit of money, not much, but so I went to Compiègne, and I spent the next 7, 8 years until I was drafted with the people I considered my parents. So outside of that, do we still have a few minutes, Pastor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me tell you the goodness of people. It's just unbelievable that when the Nazis came to arrest us, somehow Mama Suzanne was coming back from work, and she had a bicycle, and she passed by the street where our cousin lived. And she saw this infamous black truck with Nazis around and collaborators, whatever it is, and soldiers. And she knew what it was. They were going there to arrest Charles. So she pedaled as quickly, as strongly as possible, and she arrived like 5, 10 minutes after that. And she opened the door on the street, and she was screaming, Leon, Leon, sauve-toi, which means save yourself, go away, go away. So I knew what it was. I came down the stairs, I went down in the garden, I jumped, I don't know how I jumped, but over a wall about 5, 6 foot tall, and I escaped in the field that was in the back. And Papa Henri told me, I will meet you in a street called Saint Germain Street, because that day I was sick, and so Papa Henri had stayed with me. And we went to his sister-in-law, who lived about, I would say, 2 or 3 miles away from the town. When we arrived there, She didn't want us. She was so afraid of the Germans and so on. She said, no, no, I don't come in, do not come in, do not come in. So we were outside, didn't know what to do. An hour passed, and Papa Henri said, well, I'm going to go and see what is happening at the Rue Saint-Fiacre to the apartment. So he went there, and he didn't go into the street, but he stayed at the corner of the street. An apartment was maybe 100 yards away, 100 to 100 yards away. And the truck, the Nazi truck was still there. And what he saw was absolutely horrible. He saw his son coming back from work. I guess he worked for the railroad system. And he was coming, and the SS soldier there told him to go into the truck, but did not ask him for his ID, which is why I'm speaking to you today. So, Papa Henri, what would you have done as parents? Would you have just run away over there and say, I know where those two children are, that do not take my son, because it was known that once you go into that truck, you never come out. Well, he stayed there for another hour, and finally the Nazis went away, and they let René out of the truck. So that is just amazing, the
Praise.
the beauty of those people, the beauty of these people could risk their lives. So maybe you want to give your life for your children, but you do not want your children to die.
Yep. Oh my.
Wow.
Thank you for telling us that story. I know that we think just because you come to America, everything is roses and honey, and it's not. And I think people need to understand that life is a struggle when you don't have your parents. I thank you for sharing all of that. Here, Pastor Van.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been very powerful and give us a lot to think about and pray about and live about.
Tell us the name of your book again.
Yeah.
The name of the book is We Survived. It is We Survived. At Last I Speak.
Ah,
It is available on Amazon. And if I ever go by Berkeley, I'll be glad to come and sign it.
I'd like to pray for you, all of us today.
Do you, excuse me,
Yes,
do you have a library?
Do we have a library?
yes.
Okay. So what I will do is that I will send you a signed book for the library of the church.
oh,
Very
thank you.
kind.
Thank you.
That's great.
Get me on that list, Max.
Yeah.
And thank you all for taking the time. You could be watching TV.
Thank you, Leon.
Oh, yeah.
Good health, everyone.
And the
Love-
movie about the Nazis you recommended early on was
Uh,
called The Rise of the Nazis.
yes, um,
The rise of the
Right.
the rise of Nazis, the rise of the Nazis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So there is also something else that there is a movie, several movies that have been made, but one is an animation movie. It's called The Promise, and I think you can find it on online. The Promise.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Leon, we've been, this church has been, sheltering refugees for quite a while. And we have, one family right now that we're helping out, but, Father Maryland down there, on your picture, were part of the beginning of the sanctuary movement, sheltering refugees from El Salvador and Guatemala in the 80s. We've continued that today. So thank you for giving us inspiration.
I have one further final question. Sir, did you say in the course of your talk that Muslims and Jews have been fighting each other for 2,000 years? Did you say that? Did you mean that?
Yes.
I did mean it for sure. It has been going on. Is that I have read a lot of history, and it's just amazing what the Jewish people have been blamed for. Anything that has happened, I'm surprised that COVID was not blamed on the Jewish people, but all the other.
To get busy blaming the Chinese for something.
I'm sorry.
Let's see, Carolyn, we're about ready. We're over time here, so
Yes.
Thank you.
let's pick it up later. God, we thank you for Leon and for all of those that have loved him and his family, and we come to you with a sense of shock at the sinfulness of humanity, and also inspired by the heroic efforts of loving people. We pray that you would guide us to be peacemakers, to seek justice, and to love one another across boundaries and borders and identities. We ask that you would bless us with a hope that surpasses understanding. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Call me, Lana.
Awesome.
Very
I'm hoping-
inspiring.
I recorded it. I'm hoping other people listen to it. Yeah.